Hi everyone, hi Mom. Welcome to another episode of Tips, Tricks, and Tools. Today I'm going to focus on a few tips. I've had lots of questions on, how I put together a journal and how I do them quickly. I don't think I do them all that quick, but I guess, in a week. It takes me about a week, and then the second book is a lot shorter because I'm basically just doing the same book. So I wanted to share a few things that I do to help with that process. First of all, I decide the papers that I'm going to use. Now, because I have a store and I sell digital kits, I use digital kits. You don't need to. You can use, any kind of pattern paper you like. That's completely up to you. So first off, you need to decide the paper that you want to use. Second, you need to decide if you're going to supplement with other kinds of paper, such as tea stain paper, lined paper, tracing paper, graph paper, whatever it might be. Now I'm just talking to the people really who don't do like junk journals. I don't do those. But I guess you could use the same kind of process, really. But we're going to focus on digital because that's what I do and that's what I know. So these are the things that have helped me lately because I've been doing multiple journals. And normally I don't do that, but lately I've had so many requests from people that just, I don't know if it's the time change or what it is, but some don't have the opportunity of purchasing the journal. And so I thought, well, if I'm making one, it's just as easy to do another one immediately and just put two in the store at the same time. And then, it gives other people the opportunity. Okay, so let's start with how I go about this. First of all, I build my covers. Now, you don't need to actually use the craft text. This is what I use. I have a dark brown and I have this one. This is the one I've been using recently. I get mine on a bolt from Amazon.com. And, I just go with whatever color's cheapest pretty much, because you can always paint this. You can do whatever you want with this particular material. So I just want to tell you, this is what I've been using. Now, I do use hardcover gutted books, but what's been happening is because I have been making the same journals, they turn out the same size. So, oh, that's crooked. That's backwards to me. Okay, I want to say this in such a way that it's logical. So we'll start with our papers. My kits generally are 12 pages, at least 10, but I try and do 12. That means I'm going to have 2 signatures. I always decide on 2 signatures, 6 pages per signature, but that's not enough paper. So then I decide what I'm going to put in it. Now, I'm going to reach forward because I forgot this. I wanted to show you this. I keep this notebook, and what I do is every time I do a new journal, I switch the layout. So then I'll write on here, this one is for Tea and Roses. This is the layout that I used to build that journal. So when I go to build the second journal, I have it written down and boom. If I decide I want to use this again, I will add another name to this. Right now I'm working on the Victoriana journal, and I've pretty much done this layout. So I will add Victoriana to this. That lets me know that that's what I did. And then I can, I number the patterns. So when I always start with a pattern and then whatever goes next to it until I get to the next pattern. So I write it down. That way it's less confusing for me. Okay, so in this case, I've decided that I am using the 12 pages here. I'm also adding 4 of these brown pages. I'm going to be adding the lined tea-stained paper and also tracing paper and the construction paper. So I get those all set out. Sorry, I just knocked something over. I cut out all of my papers and ephemera. Now I'll show you what I do. I put everything in a box. This is what will be going into the book. So I get all of my papers cut, all of them inked. Then I'll go back and I'll ink all of my ephemera, get it all cut out, all inked. It's all ready to go. So because I know I'm doing 2 books, I double everything. So I may not print everything out right away. It really depends on how many pages I'm already at my 300 limit and I've still got 2 weeks to go. So, so that's kind of a factor as well for me. But I double everything. So I made 4 of these paper clips. I've made 4 of these little envelopes, so you've got it all prepped and ready for the next book, which is why that one goes pretty quick. I can get that one done in 3 to 4 days, depending on, what you're doing in your day and whatever. So, if speed is a factor for you, then this is, my suggestion. Just a suggestion though, people. Okay, so my pages are inked. Then I go ahead and I cut my other ones. I should say before I do that, I cut my pages, like I take the trim off. There's always a little white border, so I take that off. Then I do all my corners. Cut my other pages, my filler pages, and then do the corners on those. Okay, so the pages are now prepped. Then I prep my ephemera. I get it all cut, I get it all inked, and then the pieces that need gluing, I get all that done. Then I decide, okay, I'm going to add, say, maybe butterflies, or a frame or 2, or a flip up, or dragonflies. Whatever extras you're going to add to decorate your page, that's when I do all that. I get all of those prepped and ready. Then I go ahead and I build. So what I'll do is I'll fold all of my pages and then I'll stack them all. So I take my list and I put everything in 2 separate stacks. So now I've got 2 signatures. Then I go through, decide, okay, am I going to stamp anywhere? Before I add ephemera, I stamp. That way, when you go into stamp, like I have that, I'll show you. I don't know what it's called, but it's by Rangers. Oh, it's by Tonic. The stamp pad thingy. So you lay your paper down, then you put your stamp on in the position you want it, and then, you use this little thing, and it's like a miracle. I love this thing. So I go through, get my stamping done. Or my stenciling, whatever you decide to do. Then I will put in my ephemera. And then I build my cover. Now the reason I do that is because once that's all together, you stack it together, then you see, okay, how thick is that going to be? So here's my finished journal. So this is how thick my journal is going to be. This has all the ephemera in it, and that determines the size of my spine. Now, like I said, mine generally are the same size now because, like I said, I use 12 pages. I add about the same amount of filler pages. I add about the same amount of ephemera. So it's becoming the norm for me. And so I stick with the 1 1/4 inch spine and always a 6 inch cover, always 8.5 long, because I don't want my pages to sit at the bottom. I want a little bit of a, border around the top and bottom. And then once I've done that, then I finish the book, like I finish the cover. Get all your texturizing, whatever you want to do to it, and then you stitch them together. That's how I build a journal. So you decide whether you want corners. You decide whether you want metal pieces, whether you want to add texture paste like I've done here, elements of any kind. And then you seal it. If you want your books to last, if you're giving them as gifts, it's good to take that last step, to finish things off completely where, say they accidentally put it in a little bit of water and they didn't notice that the water was there. Well, you're sealed, you're good. You're not going to ruin your book. This is not digital paper on the outside. This is a bought cardstock. So it wouldn't run the same way, but it would warp and, wouldn't look as nice, right? So I seal it. Now, as far as what I use for supplies, I hadn't intended on doing this as a supply video, but in my opinion, now this is all just my opinion. You guys can take it or leave it. how you like. It's essential for a good cutter because I cut so much paper. I've opted for a rotary cutter because it's self-sharpening. It never needs to be sharpened. You don't have to replace blades. Yes, they're more money. Yes. I decided a long time ago that I would spend the money on tools that I had to use a lot. And then I'd cut corners in things that, weren't all that critical. Now, as far as, the way I work, the cutter is super important. My scissors are extremely important. And I have 3 pairs, 3 different kinds for 3 different things. Right tool for the job, right? So in my case, I have to have this. Not only does it cut lace really well, doesn't shred it, it cuts through metal. But do I like it for cutting paper? No, I do not. So then I use, this one is actually from Creative Memories. I've had it forever. I think it's from Creative Memories. Anyways, I've had it forever and it's still really sharp. So I use that for paper. Then when I'm doing any kind of fussy cutting, I need these. I like this. There's all kinds of, Tonic actually has a really nice pair of the little short ones, but I like these because you squeeze them. As I work, I squeeze, and I find that much easier on my hands than holding these like this. After a while, my fingers get quite sore. So, whatever works for you. That's essential. Glue, extremely important. I use Aleene's Tacky Glue. Sorry, that's upside down. Aleene's Tacky Glue is my go-to glue for almost everything. But if I'm putting embellishments on like I did on the front of this cover, I'll use this one, Gorilla Glue. Now, there's all kinds of other options out there that work the same. This is like Crazy Glue, basically. It's just Gorilla Glue. I find it works really well. Now, also, if I'm using something like this, I've tried Fabri-Tac. Personally, do not like it. It adheres to the fabric part, but I find it doesn't do very well on paper, at least not in my experience. I don't know if it's because I'm gluing it over top of a gel medium. I don't know. But regardless, I don't like it. So, my go-to. I'll show you 2. So this is what I would use to seal my book. I really love this. And you get a matte, clean matte finish. Like, it's absolutely no shine to this one. But then I just use a cheap old gloss gel medium to attach something like this. It's not going to go anywhere. Sometimes if it's quite thick, I'll use my heavy gel medium, which is by Liquitex, I believe. And it's called Heavy Gloss Medium. So this is essential in what I do. I would not trade this for anything. What else do I consider majorly essential? Well, my cutters, like corner cutters and stuff like that. Find one that works really well for you and stick with it, I have a couple of corner cutters, but, I tend to gravitate to one. If you're cutting chipboard, say you're making your journal cover out of a heavy chipboard, then you might want to invest in one of these. So this is a We Are Memory Keepers, and it opens up, and you have 2 sizes of corner rounders in here, and it will cut through heavy chipboard to get that nice rounded corner. The other essential tool I cannot live without is also by We Are Memory Keepers, and that's my Crop-A-Dile. I do have a video in one of the tips, tricks, and tools. I don't know which one it is, sorry, but I show how to use it. It's really not difficult. I know some people struggle with it, but once you use it a couple times, you're sort of like, aha moment, right? And it works. Like, for instance, the little hole at the top, yes, it helps you see the hole down here, but if you set your eyelet inside that hole, you know if that hole's going to be big enough or not. If it doesn't go in the hole, it's not going to be a big enough hole, so you need a different eyelet. Or if it's too small, it's going to wiggle around. So then you flip it over. Does it fit in this hole? You know, that's how you figure this out, okay? The slider bar is super important if you want accurate hole punching. These pop up and turn. I pretty much leave it on the same one because I use the same eyelet all the time. But if you have different, you know, different size eyelets, then it allows you to do that. Flip it around, you know, find the one that works. So essential to me. Yes, expensive. Yes. At least in Canada, all these tools are not cheap. What else is essential? A few nice trims. You don't need a lot. Dollar store. I'm telling you, I found so many trims, nice trims in the dollar store, and they look great in a book. I use floss to stitch all my books. Cheap at Michael's. I think they're like, well, in Canada, I think they're like 98 cents, I think. I get 4 books out of one skein. That's pretty cheap, you know, if you look at it that way. As I go, I'll figure out, you know, what I can tell you. I mean, I can't live without my hitch posts, but you don't need them. You know, there are other ways of, you know, you can just slide over a nice piece of trim, you know, if you want a book closure. So the extras are extras, but as far as essentials go, honestly, a good ink, super important. I have 2 that I always use, and one is a dye ink and one is the Tim Holtz distress ink. So depending on what you're using it for, one is water reactive, one is not. So if you're using a lot of liquid type mediums, you want to go with the one that isn't water reactive, or it's going to bleed into your paper. If you want that look, great. But if you don't, if you like what you've inked and you want it to stay that way, then do it in an archival ink, or Versafine or Versamark or whatever. Stays on. None of those move, okay? Couple stamps that you know you would use all the time. Like, I'm stamp nuts, right? You guys have seen my stuff. But I tend to gravitate to certain stamps and use them a lot. You don't need a ton of stuff. I'm just obsessive compulsive. So that's really why I have a lot of stuff. But if you're just making books for yourself, then really you don't need a ton of stuff. Just stuff that makes you happy, that when you put it together, you love the look. That's what you're going for. If you're giving them as gifts, you can vary the covers. Keep the inside the same. Then your books go quicker, but your covers look different. So a journal's a journal. You want to be able to journal in it. To me, that's the point of a journal. Yeah, there's all kinds of journals out there that are gorgeous to look at, but are they practical? If you are a journaler, you want a practical book. But practical doesn't necessarily mean ugly, right? You can do all kinds of cool things with it and still get good use out of it. So I'm not going to show you the book. That'll be a separate video because, you know, it's a flip through. But I wanted to let you know that I will be putting 2 in the store at the same time, which is why this isn't going to go up right now. But, you know, I was thinking about it. I've had so many people ask me, you know, how do you do it? What do you do? What are the steps? So there it is. Start with lists. I'm a list maker, you know. Write down for yourself, okay, first thing, pick the paper. Next thing, trim the paper. Next thing, cut your corners. Next thing, ink your paper. Then do the same for your ephemera. Get all that together and then stack your book. That's really how you build a journal, and the quickest way that I know how. Other people have their own methods, and I'm not saying they're wrong at all. This is just the way I work, and I'm just, you know, offering suggestions as to how it might work a little bit easier for you. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.